All right, it's time to talk about Kanye and Ty Dolla $ign's new album, Vultures. And I'm not calling it Vultures 1 because I have little to zero confidence that we're going to get a second or third installment of this album. I'm not falling for the same tricks over and over again like you guys are.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Unless it's like a Donda 2 situation where it's like we kind of got an album, but it also kind of doesn't exist at the same time. There's been a lot of controversy on the internet this week after music reviewer Anthony Fantano gave Vultures an unreviewable 1. There's obviously this should you separate the art from the artist debate that's been playing out on the internet. And Mr. Fantano believes you can't because Kanye is specifically mentioning those controversial moments across this album, including the anti-Semitic comments he's made in the past. And that's the thing too, Kanye's kind of just addressing the anti-Semitic things he said. He's kind of just like, oh yeah, you guys remember when I said that? LOL, and making jokes about it as opposed to actually addressing it and responding or apologizing or saying anything of substance regarding those things that he said. So I agree that it's kind of difficult and honestly next to impossible to separate the art from the artist when the artist is mentioning the controversial topics in their art, but I'm going to try and do my best. So we can start with the vocals, and I'll begin by saying that this is probably the worst version of Kanye that we've ever heard. After my first listen, I was very happy that Kanye didn't overdo it and shove all of his craziness down our throats because I definitely would have hated an album that was basically an hour-long Kanye rant. And even though he's not on the album cover and gets treated like a second-class citizen when it comes to the promotion of this album, the smartest thing Kanye did was allow for Ty Dolla $ign to shine and have his moment because boy, did he have a great performance throughout this album. His verses on Paid and Do It were him at his best, and it's also funny that his chorus on Paid was I'm just here to get paid, which is basically the primary reason for him doing this album in the first place. And he absolutely crushed it on the choruses for songs like Talking and Fuck Some, and Ty Dolla $ign's amazing voice and his skill set, I think, just complements Kanye so well. And he helps maintain the structural integrity of any song that Kanye's on and helps prevent him from being so manic and all over the place. And I think he holds together all of these songs very well. So at first, I just thought Kanye was letting Ty Dolla $ign have his moment, but then after a couple listens, I really tried to focus on Kanye's lyrics and what he was saying when he was rapping, and I soon realized that he didn't say much, because when he did say something, he really didn't say anything. The funniest example is the song Burn, which is actually my favorite song on the entire album. It sounds like the Life of Pablo era Kanye. But when you listen to the song in the chorus, the burn metaphor has to do with the difficulties of love. And then on the one verse of the entire song, you have Kanye rapping about running for president, the former CEO of Adidas, and the recent controversy with Balenciaga. A lot of what Kanye says is usually a whole lot of nothing, or just some tongue-in-cheek comment, or a joke, or just like mentioning, oh yeah, that happened. And then there really wasn't much substance to most of what he had to say on this album. But again, thankfully, Kanye took more of a backseat vocally, allowed Ty Dolla $ign to have his moments, and then also allowed the featured guest verses to have their moments as well. You had standout performances from Freddie Gibbs on Back to Me, you had Playboi Carti and Travis Scott on Fuck Some, you even had Quavo on Paperwork. He had a great performance. I think that's a great example of producer Kanye doing what he does best and putting whatever artist he's producing for, in that specific instance it was Quavo, in a position to perform at their best, get the most out of them, and be in a position to get the most out of what they have to offer vocally. With the song Back to Me, it's mostly really silly and just Kanye repeatedly yelling as fast as he can, and beautiful big titty but naked bitches just fall out the sky, you know? Which is a sample taken from the comedy movie Dogma that came out in 1999. But thankfully, Freddie Gibbs saved the song by giving the standout verse of this entire album, and it's nice to see him getting the recognition on such a big stage. He's delivered 3 arguably classic hip-hop albums across the last 10 years and still doesn't seem to get mentioned in the conversation of who are the top lyricists in hip-hop. I think he absolutely deserves to be in the conversation, already deservedly so, but hopefully maybe this verse kind of gets people talking about him a little more, because he has delivered us some hip-hop classics. And we got Deep Voice Carti on Fuck Some and Carnival. I thought he gave a much better performance on Fuck Something, and I think that's a much better song production-wise as well. Carnival seems to be the most streamed song on the album, which I'm pretty surprised by. The production on that song is pretty good, but I don't think it's mixed too well. I think the vocal performances on there are pretty mid, but for some reason people seem to like it. I don't really understand why. That song is a great stadium anthem and was definitely made for those big listening parties that they were doing. but I don't think it's one of the better tracks on this album. But vocals aside, everyone knows that production is Kanye's strength, and that was definitely the strength of this album, and thankfully, Kanye kept the production in the driver's seat. I already mentioned Burn sounding like a TLOP era Kanye track. I thought Paperwork, it sounds like a Yeezus era Kanye track. I think songs like Paid and Fuck Something are two of the more popular tracks on this album because of the production. Even Carnival, despite me saying I don't love it, the strength of it for sure is its production. And I think that's what Kanye executed best from a production standpoint, is he created a lot of these songs to fit so perfectly into specific activities and events that people experience very regularly. Like I said before, Carnival is a perfect stadium anthem. I would be shocked if I go out and I don't hear Fuck Something or Paid played at a bar or a club, especially on a Friday night. I would be blown away if I didn't hear the song Paid. I mean, at least bi-weekly when it's payday, we're gonna hear the song Paid. And the last thing I want to speak on is Kanye's sampling. He's obviously one of, if not the best to ever do it when it comes to sample-based production. And some of his samples are crazy. I mentioned he sampled the movie Dogma on the song Back to Me. And then the craziest, I think, is Talking. He sampled this random video of high school cheerleaders doing this pretty sick cheer, honestly.
Don't want no problems, you just talk like you do.
But there's obviously been controversies surrounding a bunch of the samples he's tried using that were not cleared. Donna Summer's estate was publicly unhappy after they declined Kanye's request to sample her song I Feel Love, and Kanye tried to get around copyright laws by basically re-singing her song as close to how she sounds as possible. And there was Ozzy Osbourne, who publicized that he refused Kanye permission to sample a live performance of his and said it was due to Kanye being an anti-Semite. Now, despite the fact that this is very hypocritical of Ozzy because A, he said that he admired Hitler in a past interview, B, he publicly admitted to trying to murder his wife Sharon, and C, him and his wife Sharon dressed like Kanye and his wife Bianca for Halloween last year, Ozzy still has the right to refuse Kanye permission to sample him, and Kanye just seems to always go about sampling by just sampling first, putting it out into the world, and then asking for forgiveness later. He did the same thing with the song Everybody, where he sampled the Backstreet Boys. He made an amazing song. He knew it was an amazing song. He just played it at one of those listening parties and put it out, knew everybody would love it and go crazy, and basically probably just hoped that the Backstreet Boys would see that everyone liked it and just let him have permission and kind of put the pressure on them. And they obviously didn't, because I'm sure this song would have been on the album if they did. But regardless of how you feel about copyright laws and sampling, the way Kanye goes about sampling, it just comes off very disrespectful to other artists, and by definition, he is stealing their art. Despite the sampling issues and Kanye's poor vocal performance, overall, I do really enjoy this album, primarily because of Kanye's production, Ty Dolla $ign's performance, and the guest verses. It's still early, the album just came out, so my opinion could change, but within Kanye's discography, I would put Vultures above Jesus is King for sure, and probably above Ye, and probably above Donda. But that's it. Which is saying a lot because Kanye has one of the greatest discographies in hip-hop history. My final score on this album, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. And that wraps up my review. Thank you for watching. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to my channel for more. I am Don Chenz, and I will see you all soon.